I found the rental agreement hidden in a manila folder wedged behind old tax returns in my parents' filing cabinet. My name was typed in neat Arial font at the top, followed by payment terms, late fees, and house rules that made my stomach drop. 3 years of monthly rent payments at $1,650, plus utilities, plus cleaning deposits. 3 years of feeling like a stranger in my childhood home. The document was dated exactly 1 week after my college graduation when I moved back to save money for my future. What made my hands shake was the second folder labeled Derek's account, containing nothing but deposit slips and a sticky note reading, Future Down Payment Fund. My younger brother had been living here completely free. The kitchen still smelled like the vanilla candles Mom always burned during our family meetings, but this conversation carried a different weight. I placed the rental agreement on the granite countertop between us, watching Patricia's face shift from confusion to defensive irritation as she recognized her own handwriting in the margins. Alisha, honey, you knew there would be expectations when you moved back home," she said, wiping her hands on the embroidered dish towel that read, Blessed Family. Her voice carried that particular tone she used when she thought she was being reasonable. "You have a good job at the marketing firm. Derek's still figuring things out." I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statements I had been tracking for months. "Mom, I've paid you $59,400 over 3 years. That's more than most people pay in rent for luxury apartments downtown. Derek makes $4,200 a month working construction, but he's never paid a single dollar." Patricia's shoulders stiffened as she adjusted her reading glasses. "Derek needs more support right now. He's the baby of the family." "He's 25 years old," I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger building in my chest. "Last month, you gave him $800 for that new gaming computer. 2 months before that, it was $1,500 for his motorcycle insurance. How is that helping him become independent?" The sound of heavy work boots on the front porch announced Derek's arrival home. He pushed through the door with his usual swagger, his concrete-dusted jeans leaving a trail across Mom's pristine hardwood floors. His red hair was matted with sweat under his backwards baseball cap, and his Carhartt shirt bore the logo of Morrison Construction, where he had worked steadily for 2 years. "What's all the serious talk about?" Derek asked, grabbing a beer from the refrigerator without asking. He popped it open and leaned against the kitchen island, his green eyes scanning the documents spread across the counter. "Oh, just discussing household finances," Patricia said quickly, but Derek's attention had already focused on the rental agreement bearing my name. "Oh, that old thing," he laughed, taking a long swig of his beer. "I told Mom and Dad they should have charged you more from the beginning. You were always the responsible one with money." The casual cruelty of his statement hit me like a physical blow. "You encouraged them to charge me rent." Derek shrugged with maddening indifference. "You could afford it. I was just getting started in my career. Besides, someone has to pay for the upkeep around here." I stared at my younger brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The entitled smirk, the way he assumed everything should be handed to him, the complete lack of awareness about fairness or family equality. "Derek, you've been making good money for 2 years. Why shouldn't you contribute something?" "Because I'm saving up for my future," he said as if it were obvious. "Mom and Dad understand that I have goals." "What goals?" I asked. "Your PlayStation collection, your weekend trips to Las Vegas." Patricia stepped between us, her hands raised in a peacekeeping gesture. "Now, children, let's not fight about this. We're family. Alisha, you know, we appreciate everything you contribute. Derek, maybe you could help out a little more around the house." "I do plenty around here," Derek protested. "I fixed the garage door last month. After Dad asked you 6 times and finally threatened to call a repair service," I pointed out, "and you used his tools and materials." Derek's face reddened, but before he could respond, Patricia intervened again. Why don't we table this discussion for now? Your father will be home from his business trip tomorrow, and we can talk about it as a family. But I was already mentally checking out of the conversation. As I gathered the documents from the counter, I noticed Derek watching me with calculating eyes. He was already planning his next move, his next argument about why he deserved special treatment. The kitchen suddenly felt suffocating, filled with the weight of 3 years of accumulated resentment and the bitter taste of favoritism I had been forced to swallow. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom surrounded by the pink wallpaper I had begged to change since high school, creating a spreadsheet on my laptop. Column A listed every payment I had made to my parents. Column B tracked every expense they had covered for Derek. Column C calculated the difference, and the number made me gasp out loud. Over 3 years, Derek had received nearly $30,000 in direct support, while I had contributed almost $60,000 to the household. The inequality was staggering, but what hurt more was the realization that my own parents saw me as a source of income rather than their daughter. Every time I had proudly handed over my rent check, thinking I was being mature and responsible, they had been depositing it into an account specifically designated for Derek's future benefit. I was not just paying rent. I was subsidizing my brother's privileged lifestyle while sacrificing my own dreams and financial independence. Sunday dinner at the Walker house had always been a tradition, but this particular evening felt charged with unspoken tension. Robert had returned from his business trip to Denver with stories about new clients and expansion opportunities for his accounting firm, while Patricia had prepared her famous pot roast with Yorkshire pudding. The dining room table was set with her good china, the pattern of blue roses that had belonged to her grandmother. Derek arrived 20 minutes late as usual, but this time he brought company. Madison Chen walked into our house like she owned it, her bleached blonde hair pulled into a messy bun and her acrylic nails tapping against her phone screen as she texted throughout Patricia's welcoming hug. "Everyone, I have some news," Derek announced as we settled around the table. He reached for the serving spoon without waiting for Dad to say grace. "Madison's lease is up next week, and she's going to move in here with us." I nearly choked on my water. "Move in here." Madison looked up from her phone for the first time, fixing me with a bored stare. "My roommate bailed on our apartment, and I can't afford the rent by myself. Derek said it wouldn't be a problem." "Of course it's not a problem," Patricia said, immediately refilling Derek's wine glass. "We have plenty of room, and it'll be nice to have another woman in the house." "What about rent?" I asked, setting down my fork with deliberate control. "Will Madison be contributing to household expenses?" Derek and Madison exchanged a look that made my stomach turn. "She's between jobs right now," Derek said defensively, "but she'll help out around the house. Won't you, babe?" Madison shrugged. "Sure, I guess. I mean, I'm not really a cleaning person, but I can do whatever." Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Derek, son, maybe we should discuss the logistics privately first." "There's nothing to discuss," Patricia said firmly. "Madison is welcome here. Actually, Alisha, this might be a good time to talk about adjusting your contribution. With another person using utilities and groceries, it would be fair for you to increase your rent to $18.50 per month." The words hung in the air like a slap. I looked around the table at my family, searching for any sign that someone else recognized the absurdity of what had just been proposed. Dad was studying his plate with intense focus. Derek was cutting his meat with satisfied precision. Madison had returned to her phone. "Let me understand this correctly," I said slowly. "Madison gets to live here for free, use all the facilities, eat the food, contribute nothing financially, and my rent goes up to cover the additional expenses." "It's not like that," Derek protested. "Madison will help out. Tell her Madison." Madison didn't look up from her phone. "Yeah, totally. I'll do dishes sometimes or whatever." "Sometimes?" I repeated. "Dishes sometimes." Patricia reached across the table to pat my hand in that condescending way that had always made my skin crawl. "Honey, you make good money. $18.50 isn't unreasonable for a nice room in a beautiful neighborhood. Think of it as an investment in family harmony. Family harmony, I echoed, pulling my hand away. Is that what we're calling it? The memory of my college years flashed through my mind with painful clarity. Working double shifts at the campus bookstore and the local coffee shop, eating ramen noodles for weeks at a time, carefully calculating every textbook purchase, while Derek got care packages filled with snacks and spending money. I had graduated debt-free through sheer determination and sacrifice, while Derek had received a full ride through the bank of mom and dad. "I need some air," I announced, standing abruptly. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor with an ugly screech. Alisha, don't be dramatic," Patricia called after me, but I was already heading for the front door. I walked around the neighborhood for an hour, past the well-maintained lawns and matching mailboxes of Maple Grove Estates, trying to process what had just happened. My parents had not only accepted Derek's girlfriend moving in, without any discussion or contribution requirements, they had immediately decided I should pay more to subsidize her presence. The pattern was so clear, so blatantly unfair, that I wondered how I had missed it for so long. When I returned to the house, Madison was sprawled across the living room couch, watching reality television. At full volume, her shoes kicked off and her feet propped on the coffee table. Derek was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear the familiar sounds of his video games coming from the basement. "Oh, where should I put my stuff?" Madison asked without looking away from the screen. "Derek said I could use your bathroom since mine doesn't have good lighting for my makeup routine." I stood in the doorway watching this stranger make herself comfortable in what had been my family home, and something fundamental shifted inside me. The assumption that I would simply accept whatever arrangements were made for me, pay whatever was demanded, and smile gratefully for the privilege of being treated like a second-class member of my own family. "You'll have to work that out with Derek," I said evenly, then headed upstairs to my room. That night, I opened my laptop and began researching apartment prices in Portland. Then, almost as an afterthought, I searched for houses for sale. The numbers that appeared on my screen made me sit up straighter in my desk chair. With my savings and the steady income from my marketing job, homeownership was not just possible, it was within reach. The opportunity came when my parents decided to take a romantic weekend getaway to the Oregon coast for their 28th wedding anniversary. They asked me to house-sit, water the plants, and keep an eye on Derek and Madison. What they did not expect was for me to spend Saturday afternoon conducting a thorough investigation of their financial records. I started in Dad's home office, a wood-paneled room that smelled like leather, and the expensive cologne Patricia bought him every Christmas. His filing system was meticulously organized with labeled folders for taxes, insurance, investments, and household expenses. What I found in the folder marked family financial planning made my blood run cold. There were spreadsheets dating back to my college graduation, tracking every penny I had paid in rent, utilities, and household contributions. Neat columns showed my payments totaling $59,400 over 3 years. But that was just the beginning. A separate spreadsheet titled Derek Support Fund listed thousands of dollars in transfers, motorcycle insurance, gaming equipment, vacation loans, car repairs, and something labeled emergency assistance that appeared monthly like clockwork. The most devastating discovery was a manila envelope containing legal documents. Inside, I found a draft will that listed Derek as the sole inheritor of the family house, valued at $450,000. There was also a detailed succession plan for Dad's accounting practice, with Derek designated as the beneficiary, despite having zero experience or interest in business management. My hands shook as I photographed each document with my phone. The evidence painted a clear picture of systematic financial discrimination. While I had been contributing to the household and building what I thought was a mutually beneficial arrangement, my parents had been funneling my money toward Derek's future while ensuring I would inherit nothing. I moved to the kitchen where Patricia kept her personal financial records, in a decorative box shaped like a recipe book. Inside, I found bank statements showing regular transfers from their checking account to Derek's personal savings account. The amounts varied, but they were consistent: 500 here, 800 there, sometimes over $1,000 for what the memo lines described as investment opportunities and career development. The text message conversations I found on Patricia's iPad were perhaps the most painful discovery. Screenshots showed months of discussions between my parents about maximizing Alisha's contributions and ensuring Derek has adequate support for his transition to independence. One exchange from the previous month made me physically nauseous. Patricia, Derek wants to take Madison to Lake Tahoe next weekend. Should we increase Alisha's rent or give him another loan? Robert, let's try the rent increase first. Frame it as additional household expenses. Patricia, good thinking. She's always been responsible with money. She can handle it. The casual way they discussed manipulating me, the assumption that I would simply accept whatever financial burden they imposed, revealed a level of calculated exploitation I had never imagined possible from my own parents. But the investigation also revealed something else. My own financial position was far stronger than I had realized. While obsessively tracking my rent payments and living expenses, I had been steadily building a substantial savings account. Between my marketing salary, careful budgeting, and the investment contributions I had been making through my employer's retirement plan, I had accumulated $87,000 in liquid savings. I spent Sunday morning meeting with Jennifer Walsh, a real estate agent I had contacted through a friend's recommendation. Jennifer was a sharp woman in her 40s with an honest manner and impressive knowledge of the Portland housing market. With your income and savings, she explained as we sat in her office reviewing my financial profile, you qualify for excellent mortgage terms. But with $87,000 in cash, you might consider looking at properties in the $150,000 to $200,000 range. You could make a substantial down payment and have very reasonable monthly payments. What about a cash purchase? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Jennifer raised her eyebrows. Cash purchases are incredibly powerful in this market. Sellers love them because there's no financing contingency and you can close quickly. With your savings, you could definitely consider properties up to about $90,000. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone to show her my complete financial picture, I have additional investments and retirement savings that I could access if necessary. What would my options look like with a cash budget of around $120,000? Jennifer's expression shifted to pure professionalism mixed with genuine excitement. Now we're talking about a completely different conversation. Let me show you what's available. For the next 2 hours, we reviewed listings for houses, condominiums, and townhomes within my price range. The options were better than I had ever imagined: move-in ready properties with updated kitchens, hardwood floors, private yards, and square footage that exceeded my current living situation at my parents' house. There's one property I think you should see, Jennifer said, pulling up a listing that made my heart skip. It's a 1940 craftsman bungalow that was just renovated. The owners need a quick sale because they're relocating for work. It's listed at $115,000, but with a cash offer, you might get it for less. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, original hardwood floors, throughout a updated kitchen with granite countertops, and a fenced backyard with mature fruit trees. The photos showed built-in bookcases, a clawfoot bathtub, and period details that gave the home character while maintaining modern functionality. Can we see it tomorrow? I asked. Jennifer smiled. I'll call the listing agent right now. Driving home from the real estate office, I felt a sense of possibility I had not experienced in years. The financial records in my parents' office had revealed the calculated nature of their favoritism, but they had also shown me something else. I had the power to change my situation completely. That evening, I sat in my childhood bedroom calculating mortgage payments, property taxes, and utility costs for independent living. The numbers worked beautifully. Not only could I afford to buy a house, but my monthly expenses would actually decrease compared to what I was currently paying my parents. Derek and Madison spent the evening in the living room, Madison's feet propped on the coffee table, while Derek played video games with the volume turned up loud enough to vibrate the walls. Neither of them acknowledged my presence when I walked through to get a glass of water, too absorbed in their respective screens to notice the world around them. For the first time in 3 years, I went to sleep with a smile on my face, dreaming about hardwood floors and a kitchen where I could cook without asking permission to use the good pans. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of October in Portland, and I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Jennifer had arranged 3 house showings, including the craftsman bungalow that had captured my imagination. I dressed carefully in professional clothes and comfortable shoes, carrying a leather portfolio to take notes and appear serious to sellers. The first property was a disappointment, a 1970s ranch house with orange shag carpet and a kitchen that looked like it had not been updated since the Carter administration. The second was better, but located too close to the highway for comfort. But when Jennifer unlocked the door to the Craftsman bungalow on Elm Street, I knew I was home. The front porch featured original columns and decorative brackets, painted in warm gray with a white trim that complemented the natural stone foundation. Inside, sunlight streamed through large windows onto honey-colored oak floors that gleamed with recent refinishing. The living room had built-in bookcases flanking a brick fireplace and French doors open to the dining room, where a vintage chandelier cast rainbow prisms across the walls. The kitchen was completely renovated last year, Jennifer explained, leading me through an archway to reveal granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and custom cabinets painted in sage green, all new electrical and plumbing throughout the house. The master bedroom was spacious enough for a king-size bed and dresser with 2 large windows overlooking the backyard. The master bathroom featured the clawfoot tub I had seen in photos, surrounded by subway tile and brushed nickel fixtures that managed to look both vintage and contemporary. "What do you think?" Jennifer asked as we stood in the backyard beneath apple and pear trees heavy with fall fruit. "I want to make an offer," I said without hesitation. "Full asking price cash with a 2-week closing period." Jennifer grinned. "Now that's what I like to hear. Let me call the listing agent." The next 3 hours passed in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and negotiations. The sellers accepted my offer within 90 minutes, thrilled with the prospect of a guaranteed cash sale with no financing contingencies. By Thursday afternoon, I had a signed purchase agreement for a house I would own outright within 2 weeks. The secrecy required to coordinate the purchase added an element of excitement to the process. I arranged time off work using accumulated vacation days, claiming I needed to handle some personal business. I met with Jennifer, the home inspector, and the closing attorney during lunch breaks and early mornings, carefully avoiding any schedule conflicts that might raise questions at home. Meanwhile, life at my parents' house had become increasingly unbearable. Madison had moved her belongings into what she considered our bathroom, filling the counter space with expensive skincare products and makeup that she left scattered across every surface. Her hair clogged the shower drain, her wet towel stayed crumpled on the floor, and her electric hair tools remained plugged in and ready for use at all times. Derek's attitude had grown even more entitled since Madison's arrival. He treated the house like his personal resort, leaving dirty dishes in the sink for days and expecting Patricia to handle his laundry. When Dad suggested Derek might contribute something toward household expenses now that he had a live-in girlfriend, Derek responded with wounded indignation. "I do plenty around here," he protested during a family meeting that Tuesday evening. "Besides, Alisha makes more money than Madison and me combined. She can afford to help out more." "Derek's right," Madison chimed in, examining her nails with bored concentration. Like, why should we pay for stuff when she obviously doesn't need the money? I sat quietly through their discussion, mentally calculating square footage and imagining my furniture arranged in rooms that would belong entirely to me. When Patricia announced that my rent increase to $18.50 would begin the following month, I simply nodded and excused myself to my room. The home inspection revealed minor issues that the sellers agreed to address before closing a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, some loose tiles on the front walkway, and weather stripping around the windows that needed replacement. Everything else was in excellent condition, from the new roof to the updated electrical panel in the basement. By Friday, I had arranged for professional movers, transferred utilities into my name, and selected paint colors for the rooms I planned to redecorate. The excitement of homeownership mixed with nervous anticipation about my family's reaction when they discovered what I had been planning. Saturday morning, I drove past my future house 3 times, memorizing details and imagining myself unlocking the front door with my own key. The neighborhood was quiet and established, with mature trees lining the streets and well-maintained houses that suggested stable long-term residents. The elementary school at the end of the block had a playground where children were already gathering for weekend soccer practice. That evening, Derek and Madison announced they were planning a housewarming party for their friends the following weekend. Just a small thing, Derek assured my parents. Maybe 20 or 30 people. Madison wants to show off her new place. Patricia immediately began planning decorations and menu options, while Dad worried aloud about liability insurance and noise complaints from the neighbors. I excused myself to my room and spent the evening researching homeowners' insurance and property taxes, filling out forms that would make me legally and financially responsible for my own piece of the American dream. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday afternoon. I would walk into the attorney's office as someone who paid rent to live in her childhood bedroom and walk out as someone who owned a 3-bedroom house with a mortgage-free deed. The transformation felt surreal, like stepping through a door into a completely different life. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies, the kind of October weather that makes Portland feel like the most beautiful city in America. I dressed in my best professional attire, a navy blue suit, pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, and shoes comfortable enough for walking through my future home one final time before closing. The final walkthrough with Jennifer revealed that the sellers had addressed all inspection issues perfectly. The new faucet gleamed in the guest bathroom, the front walkway tiles sat level and secure, and fresh weather stripping around the windows would keep heating costs low through the winter months. The house smelled like lemon cleaning products and fresh paint ready for its new owner. "Are you excited?" Jennifer asked as we stood in the living room where afternoon light created geometric patterns across the polished oak floors. Terrified and thrilled in equal measure, I admitted. I keep expecting someone to tell me this is all a mistake. "Trust me, you've earned this," Jennifer said firmly. "I've seen a lot of buyers over the years, and your financial discipline is impressive. Most 28-year-olds couldn't make a cash purchase like this." The closing attorney's office was located in a converted Victorian house downtown with Persian rugs and mahogany furniture that made the legal proceedings feel dignified and important. I signed document after document, the deed, the closing disclosure, the settlement statement, and forms for title insurance and property tax transfers. When the attorney handed me the keys to my house, the weight of the metal in my palm felt like holding the future. $114,500 had transferred from my savings account to the sellers, leaving me with a mortgage-free home and enough remaining funds to handle moving expenses and initial furnishings. "Congratulations, Ms. Walker," the attorney said, shaking my hand formally. "You are now the sole owner of 847 Elm Street." I drove straight to my house, letting myself in with my own key and walking through every room as the legal owner. The silence felt different now, peaceful rather than empty. This was my space to arrange however I chose my sanctuary, where no one could charge me rent or dictate terms for my continued presence. Moving day had been scheduled for Monday morning when my parents would be at work and Derek would be on a construction site across town. The professional movers I had hired were efficient and experienced, capable of relocating my entire life in less than 4 hours. I had spent the weekend carefully packing my belongings, labeling boxes, and preparing for a seamless transition. Derek's reaction to my absence Monday morning was exactly what I had expected. He came upstairs around noon, looking for something in my room, probably planning to borrow my laptop or ask me to drive him somewhere since his motorcycle was in the shop again. Instead, he found empty spaces where my furniture had been, bare walls where my pictures had hung, and a manila envelope containing documents he was not supposed to see. The envelope held copies of my closing paperwork, property deed, and a typed letter explaining my departure. I had deliberately left these materials where Derek would find them, knowing his curiosity would overcome any respect for privacy. The purchase agreement alone would send him into a tailspin, but the final sale price would absolutely shatter his assumptions about my financial capabilities. My phone started ringing at 12:37, exactly when I had predicted Derek would discover the evidence of my house purchase. I let the calls go to voicemail while I supervised the movers arranging furniture in my new living room, but the progression of messages painted a clear picture of the chaos erupting at Maple Grove Estates. Derek's first message was confused. "Alisha, what the hell? Your room is empty and there's some paperwork here about a house. Call me back right now." The second message came 15 minutes later, with panic creeping into his voice. "Seriously, Alisha, this isn't funny. Mom and Dad are going to freak out when they see this. Where are you?" By the third message, Derek had clearly read the purchase documents more carefully. "You bought a house for over $100,000 in cash. How is that even possible? Call me back immediately." Madison must have gotten involved in the fourth message because I could hear her shrill voice in the background demanding explanations, while Derek tried to process what he had discovered. "Alisha, Madison is really upset about this. She was looking forward to sharing the space with you, and now she doesn't know where she's gonna put her stuff. This is really selfish." The final message came at 1:45, after Derek had clearly contacted our parents at work. "Dad is on his way home from the office, and Mom is leaving her book club meeting early. You better have a good explanation for this, Alisha, because everyone is really confused and hurt right now." I saved all the voicemails and continued unpacking boxes in my new kitchen, arranging dishes in cabinets that belonged entirely to me. The refrigerator was empty, except for a bottle of champagne Jennifer had given me as a housewarming gift, waiting in the freezer for the appropriate moment to celebrate. That moment came at 2:30 when my parents and Derek called me simultaneously from the empty bedroom that had once been mine. I answered the phone while standing in my new master bathroom, admiring the clawfoot tub and planning my first long soak in homeowner bliss. "Alisha Elizabeth Walker." Patricia's voice came through the speaker with the particular tone she used when she considered herself deeply disappointed in my behavior. "What in the world is going on?" "Hi, Mom," I said calmly, running my hand along the smooth granite countertop in my new master bathroom. "I'm just settling into my new house. How was your book club meeting?" The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds before Robert's voice joined the conversation. "Sweetie, Derek found some paperwork that suggests you bought a house. Is that accurate?" "Completely accurate, Dad. I closed on it this morning. It's a beautiful 1940 Craftsman with original hardwood floors and a renovated kitchen. You should come see it sometime." Derek's voice exploded through the speaker. "How did you buy a house? You don't have that kind of money." I smiled at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, enjoying this moment of revelation more than I had anticipated. "Actually, Derek, I do. I bought it with cash. No mortgage, no monthly payments, just a clear deed with my name on it." The chaos that erupted on the other end of the phone call was audible even through the poor connection. Derek was shouting questions about where the money came from. Madison was demanding to know why I had not told them about my plans, and my parents were trying to regain control of a conversation that had clearly spiraled beyond their expectations. "We'll be right over," Patricia announced, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Give us your address." "Actually, that's not going to work for me today," I said pleasantly. "I'm still getting settled in. How about I call you tomorrow when things are less hectic?" I hung up before anyone could respond, then turned off my phone and opened the bottle of champagne in my new kitchen. The first sip tasted like freedom. Sunday afternoon brought unseasonably warm weather and an unexpected visitor parade to my front porch. I was arranging books on the built-in shelves in my living room when the doorbell rang, followed immediately by aggressive knocking that could only belong to Derek. Through the peephole, I could see my entire family clustered on my front porch like an awkward delegation. Derek stood closest to the door, his face red with frustration and his work clothes suggesting he had come directly from a construction site. Madison lurked behind him, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scowl that conveyed her displeasure at being dragged into family drama. Patricia and Robert flanked them both, my mother clutching her purse like armor, and my father wearing the uncomfortable expression he always got during family conflicts. I opened the door but remained in the doorway, not inviting them inside. "This is a surprise. I thought I mentioned yesterday that today wasn't convenient for visitors." Alisha, we need to talk," Robert said, his accounting-trained voice attempting diplomacy. "There seems to be some confusion about your living situation." "No confusion on my end," I replied evenly. "I bought a house and moved out. It's pretty straightforward." Derek pushed past my father's attempted mediation. "You can't just disappear without telling anyone Madison was counting on sharing your bathroom, and now she doesn't have anywhere to put her makeup collection." I looked at Madison, who was examining her acrylic nails with the bored expression of someone being forced to participate in consequences she considered beneath her attention span. "Madison has access to 2 full bathrooms at your parents' house. I'm sure she can find adequate counter space." "That's not the point," Derek continued, his voice rising. "You were part of the family arrangement. You can't just abandon your responsibilities because you're having some kind of tantrum." The word responsibilities hung in the air between us, crystallizing years of accumulated resentment into this single moment. I stepped back and gestured for them to enter my living room, deciding it was time for a complete honesty. "Let's talk about responsibilities," I said once they had arranged themselves uncomfortably on my new sofa and chairs. "Derek, in the past 3 years, how much money have you contributed to Mom and Dad's household expenses?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. "That's not how family works, Alisha. We help each other out in different ways." "I'll take that as $0, I continued. "Madison, how much will you be contributing now that you're living at their house permanently?" Madison shrugged without looking up from her phone. "Derek and I are still figuring out our budget. It's complicated." "Another 0, I noted. "Mom, Dad, would you like to share with Derek and Madison how much money I've contributed over the past 3 years? Patricia's face flushed. "Alisha, this isn't appropriate dinner table conversation." "We're not at the dinner table," I pointed out. "We're in my living room in my house that I bought with my money, so let's talk about money." I walked to my dining room and returned with a folder containing printed copies of all the financial records I had discovered in their filing cabinet. "Derek, you might find this interesting reading. It's a complete breakdown of family finances over the past 3 years. Derek reluctantly accepted the folder while Madison leaned over to peer at the documents. Their expressions shifted from boredom to confusion to shock as they processed the numbers. $59,000! Derek's voice cracked slightly. "You paid them $59,000 in rent, plus utilities, plus special assessments for things like new appliances and landscaping," I confirmed. "Meanwhile, according to these records, you received approximately $30,000 in direct financial support during the same period." Madison grabbed the papers from Derek's hands, scanning the lists of expenses covered by my parents on Derek's behalf. They paid for your motorcycle insurance and your Vegas trips and that gaming computer. That's different, Derek protested weakly. Those were loans. I'm going to pay them back. I pulled out my phone and showed them the bank statements I had photographed. Actually, Derek, there's no record of any repayment. These are listed as gifts and family support, not loans. Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Alisha, every family handles finances differently. Derek is still getting established in his career. Dad Derek makes $4,200 a month at a steady job. He's been established for 2 years. The only difference is that you've never required him to be financially responsible because you always assumed I would subsidize the family expenses. Patricia stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This is ridiculous, Alisha. We provided you with a safe, comfortable home while you saved money for your future. That's what good parents do. A safe, comfortable home that I paid market rate rent to access, I corrected, while Derek received the same accommodation for free, plus additional financial support for his entertainment and transportation expenses. Derek was still staring at the financial records, finally understanding the scope of the inequality he had not only accepted, but encouraged. I didn't realize it was this much money. Because you never asked, I said gently. You assumed that because I was responsible with money, I should handle the family's financial burden while you enjoyed complete freedom from any expectations or obligations. Madison had moved to examine my living room, running her fingers along the built-in bookcases and peering into the kitchen with obvious envy. This house is really nice, she said, her voice carrying a note of wounded entitlement. Derek, why can't we afford something like this? Because Derek has never had to budget or save money, I explained. Every time he wanted something, Mom and Dad provided it. He's never learned financial discipline because he's never faced financial consequences. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of recognition. Derek was processing the reality of his privileged position. Madison was calculating the lifestyle implications of Derek's actual financial resources, and my parents were confronting the inequality of their treatment. So what do you want from us? Patricia asked finally. An apology. You got what you wanted, a beautiful house and your independence. What more could you possibly need? I looked around my living room at these people who shared my DNA but had treated me like a source of income rather than a daughter and sister. I want acknowledgement that the treatment I received was unfair. I want Derek to understand that financial responsibility is part of being an adult. And I want future family interactions to be based on equality and mutual respect rather than assumption that I exist to subsidize everyone else's lifestyle. Derek was still staring at the numbers, his face pale with the dawning realization that his entire adult life had been artificially supported by my contributions. Alisha, I honestly didn't know it was this unequal. Now you do, Guy, I said. The question is what you're going to do about it. Robert stood up, extending his hand toward me in a gesture that seemed both apologetic and proud. Alisha, I have to admit, buying this house shows incredible financial maturity. I'm impressed by what you've accomplished. It was the first acknowledgement I had received from my father about my financial capabilities, and despite everything, it meant something to hear him say it. What happens now? Madison asked, still examining my kitchen with obvious longing. Now Derek learns to pay his own way, I said simply, and you both figure out how to contribute to the household where you're living, just like every other adult in America. Derek nodded slowly, finally understanding that his free ride had ended, not because I was being vindictive, but because he was 25 years old and perfectly capable of financial responsibility. As my family prepared to leave, Patricia lingered by the front door. Alisha, despite everything, you'll always have a place in our family. I know, I said, but it will need to be a place based on respect rather than exploitation. After they left, I sat in my living room listening to the silence of my own home, feeling the satisfaction of boundaries clearly established and truths finally spoken. The hardest conversation was over, and the real work of rebuilding family relationships on equal terms could begin. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen preparing Thanksgiving dinner for my family, the first major holiday we had shared since the confrontation in my living room. The house smelled like roasting turkey and cinnamon rolls, traditional scents that felt different when they came from my own oven rather than someone else's. The transformation in family dynamics had been gradual but profound. Derek had initially resisted the idea of paying rent to our parents, arguing that family should not charge family for basic housing. But when Patricia and Robert presented him with the choice between contributing $400 monthly toward household expenses or finding his own apartment, reality struck with surprising force. Madison had lasted exactly 3 weeks under the new financial expectations. The moment Derek explained that he could no longer fund her shopping trips and spa days, she packed her belongings and moved back in with her mother, leaving Derek to confront his own financial limitations without a girlfriend to impress. "The house looks beautiful," Patricia said, admiring the autumn decorations I had arranged throughout the living and dining rooms. She had been making a genuine effort to rebuild our relationship, acknowledging the favoritism that had damaged our family dynamic for years. Robert carved the turkey with ceremonial precision, a job that had always belonged to him during family gatherings. "Alisha, I have to say, watching you handle homeownership has been educational for all of us. You've shown remarkable maturity." Derek arrived exactly on time, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing clothes that actually matched. The past 6 months of financial responsibility had changed him in ways I had not expected. Without the safety net of parental bailouts, he had learned to budget, save money, and make thoughtful purchasing decisions. "I brought dessert too," he announced, setting down a store-bought pumpkin pie. "And before you ask, yes, I paid for it myself." The joke was self-deprecating rather than bitter, a sign of how much Derek's perspective had shifted. He had moved into a small apartment near his construction job site, splitting expenses with a roommate, and discovering that independence felt better than he had anticipated. "How's the new place?" I asked, genuinely curious about his experience with adult responsibilities. "Smaller than I expected, but it's mine," Derek said, his voice carrying a note of pride I had not heard before. "Well, mine and Tyler's. My roommate is actually pretty cool. He's teaching me how to cook something besides frozen pizza." Patricia laughed, a sound that carried relief and maternal approval. "Your father and I have been enjoying the quiet house, although we miss having you both around for dinner every night." Speaking of dinner," Robert interrupted, "I think we should acknowledge something important before we eat." He stood up, raising his water glass in a gesture that felt formal but heartfelt. "To Alisha, who taught us that treating family fairly doesn't mean treating everyone the same. Your courage to establish boundaries helped us become better parents and better people." The toast felt awkward and emotional in equal measure, but it represented progress toward the kind of family relationship I had always wanted. Derek raised his glass with genuine sincerity, no longer the entitled younger brother who assumed special treatment was his birthright. "To Alisha," Derek echoed, "who showed me that taking responsibility for my own life feels better than having everything handed to me." Over dinner, we talked about Derek's job prospects, my recent promotion to senior marketing coordinator, and Robert's plans for expanding his accounting practice. The conversation felt different from our old family dinners, more balanced and respectful, with everyone contributing rather than Derek dominating discussion while I subsidized his lifestyle. "I've been thinking about buying a house myself," Derek announced as Patricia served dessert. "Nothing fancy like Alicia's place, but something small that I can afford on my own." The statement represented a complete reversal from 6 months earlier when Derek had assumed home ownership was something that happened to other people while he enjoyed permanent residence in his childhood bedroom. That's exciting, I said, meaning it. If you want help looking at properties or understanding the mortgage process, I'd be happy to share what I learned. Derek's smile was grateful but not dependent, the expression of someone who appreciated offers of assistance without expecting them as his due. I might take you up on that. I want to do it right the first time. As evening approached and my family prepared to leave, Patricia helped me clear the dinner dishes, working together in my kitchen with the easy cooperation we had not shared since I was a child. "Oh, Alisha, I want you to know that your father and I have been going to family counseling," she said quietly, rinsing plates before loading them into my dishwasher. "We're trying to understand how we created such an unfair situation without recognizing it." "That means a lot to me," I said. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just needed the inequality to stop." "You were right to stand up for yourself," Patricia said firmly. "I'm proud of the woman you've become, even if it took me too long to show it properly." After my family left, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, watching the first winter snow begin to fall outside my windows. The house felt peaceful in a way that went beyond simple quiet, filled with the satisfaction of boundaries respected and relationships rebuilt on healthier foundations. The financial independence that had seemed like an impossible dream 3 years earlier had become the foundation for everything else: self-respect, family equality, and the confidence that comes from knowing I could handle whatever challenges life presented. Derek's transformation had been perhaps the most surprising aspect of the entire experience. Once freed from the assumption that his parents would handle all his financial responsibilities, he had discovered capabilities and confidence he never knew he possessed. His apartment was small but clean. His budget was tight but manageable, and his relationship with our parents had improved dramatically once it was based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The house around me felt like more than just an investment or a place to live. It represented the power of financial literacy, the importance of setting boundaries, and the truth that sometimes the people who love us most can treat us worst when we allow them to take our contributions for granted. Looking back, I realized that buying this house had given me more than just home ownership. It had given me the power to redefine family relationships on terms that honored everyone's dignity and potential. Derek had become a more responsible adult. My parents had confronted their own favoritism, and I had learned that protecting my own financial welfare was not selfish, it was essential. The life lesson that emerged from those difficult months was profound, but simple, true family love requires equal respect and treatment, and financial independence is often the key to establishing healthy boundaries with people who would otherwise exploit your generosity. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family members took advantage of your financial responsibility while expecting you to subsidize their lifestyle choices? How did you handle the inequality? And what strategies did you use to establish fair boundaries without destroying important relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with your own experiences with family financial dynamics, please give it a like and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the power of financial independence and healthy boundaries. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building the life you deserve through courage, planning, and self-respect. Thank you for joining me on this journey from financial exploitation to homeownership and family healing. I hope Alisha's story inspires you to examine your own relationships and make whatever changes are necessary to ensure you're treated with the respect and equality you deserve. May your own path to independence be filled with the courage to stand up for yourself and the wisdom to rebuild relationships on foundations of mutual respect and genuine love.